Infinite bliss bullshit. You may have heard, we are actually we keep hearing this from the mainstream spiritual realm, that when you get enlightened or when you get awakened, you'll have this continuous experience of infinite blissfulness, or ecstatic infinite bliss. But it's merely an exaggeration, and it's important that you have to understand why this is like an exaggeration and it's not completely true, and where is this coming from, so that you'll have clarity, you'll attain clarity about who you really are, and maybe luckily you will stop seeking that thing that which doesn't really exist. So the first question, let's ask the first question: if there is such thing called infinite bliss, where is it manifested? Is it in the body or is it in the mind? Where is it manifested? So let's say that's it has to be somewhere, right? So if this infinite bliss is really infinite, what is actually preventing us from experiencing it right now? If it is so infinite, how would you miss it? So that's the second point. So the word infinite bliss has been misunderstood by the common seekers, and they keep searching for something, a bliss, like what, like when I get enlightened I'll experience this something very very different, or something ecstatic, something amazing, or something, it's a mind-blowing experience or something. That's why you keep imagining in your head that one day you will have access to this infinite bliss or infinite, you know, ecstasy. But that is not going to happen, because as I said, you can't miss it if there is something called as infinite bliss. So what is happening is there are really two different kinds of seekers. The first kind of seeker is a an agitated seeker, and the second kind of seeker is a sattvic seeker or the calm seeker. So let's talk about this agitated seeker one first. The agitated seeker is the one who had been experiencing a lot of trauma since probably since his childhood, or he is going through a lot of suffering himself. So that suffering is actually manifested in his body, because that's where your muscle neuromuscular pain and neuromuscular agitation and anxiety is manifested, right? So one day what happens to him is this agitated seeker finally stumbles upon to the realization of who he really is. Like one day he wonders, oh, I'm suffering so much, what is that is suffering, and then creates a gap between him as an observer and the suffering. And then that knowledge, that could be called as awakening, and that knowledge transforms into wisdom, like I'm not the body, I'm not the world, I'm not the mind or anything, I'm just an observer observing the things. And then this mental strange hold of the body will slowly diminish, and then he will naturally over a period of time enter into a state of relaxation, body wise, physically, because he's no longer trying to control the body, and the body is on its own, and all these uh, muscular tensions or muscular anxieties that is usually manifested in normal people will slowly start disappearing, and then eventually get flushed out of his whole system. And then it thinks he's manifested this infinite bliss, because he's talking in comparison to his previous state. His previous state was like where he was experiencing this uh, trauma. It was so much unbearable, so much pain, so much suffering. And now from that state to this state, this feels like heaven, right? So the heaven, the kingdom, like the kingdom of heaven is within, or something like that. So that's when he finally thinks like, okay, this is so good, so better than his previous state. But this need not apply to the sattvic seeker. But sattvic seeker is the one who do not have any kind of traumatic experience in his life. He's just is naturally a calm person, naturally a peaceful person, naturally a relaxed person. So if you talk about it, if you have to give examples, Eckhart Tolle's example of was an example of agitated seeker, and or Ramana Maharshi is an example of the Sattvic seeker. Ramana Maharshi never felt like life is full of suffering, or Ramana Maharshi never had this childhood trauma or suffering or pain or something, and that made him there was no such suffering that made him seek. It was just a genuine curiosity, or one day it just happened to him that he was about to die, and this intense fear of death took him over, and that made him see that he's not just the body or not just the mind. There's also the awareness that is in which this whole thing is unfolding. So that's how he stumbled into himself. But when you take the example of Eckhart Tolle, he had a very 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 depressing past. He was almost considering to commit suicide at this point, and then he stumbles into himself, and then the energy dissipates from your body, and the anxious energy, the anxiety and everything dissipates from his body, and then he thinks like, okay, this is so good. So the agitated seeker, when he realizes the self and finds it blissful, then he exaggerates because he's comparing it from a past where he was suffering very 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 severely. But the Sattvic seeker doesn't have that kind of problem. So Sattvic seeker will not think it is something ecstatic. It was his natural state, because it was already relaxed in his body. He was already having a very good blissful life. There was not much suffering. It's just a question of who am I that made him seek, right? It's just a question of it's just a confusion of existential confusion that made him seek. It's not like I want to end this suffering, I wanted to go beyond this world, I want to end my life, or I just wanted to get mukti because this life is so bullshit, this life's suffering, I have to get away from this. This is not the motivation for him to seek. So the Sattvic seeker, when he hears this kind of things from others, like, then he keeps imagining that there is something else to attain. No, there's nothing else to attain. You already have that calmness and peacefulness and blissfulness already manifest in your body. You just don't have, it's already there. That's what it is. It's not again a separate state, or it's not again a separate new experience. So he keeps deluding himself that there is more to do, more practice to do, more sadhana to do, and then one day he will experience this intense bliss that all these other people have been talking about, and then he goes in circles and circles and circles and wastes his time. So this is for those Sattvic seekers, to remind you, or to just give an insight, or for you it's just the same. It will be just the same. There won't be this infinite bliss kind of ecstatic things in your life. You're already in that state. So it's just the realization that you're already in that state will help you, might actually help you stop your seeking, and then even more, of course, even once the seeking is stopped, you will experience much more clearly, in the sense, even the seeking is some sort of agitation, right? So once that is done, it will be a very pure blissfulness, but the difference won't be much. So you are already there. You don't have, there is no special state.